Hey, what's going on, people? I decided to make a quick video in regards to Trayvon Martin. I know it's kind of late. The verdict has already been announced, and the media hoopla has kind of died down. But I kind of struggled with the idea of making a video in regards to that topic. But I figured I would voice out my opinion on it, and also because one or two subscribers actually asked me to write about it. Um, One thing about situations like Trayvon Martin is that it brings out a lot of polarized reactions. And I think that's because it really exposes people who are very heavily influenced by cognitive bias. To some extent, we all are, but I think some people have the ability to recognize how their cognitive bias might affect their judgment or their perception of reality, while some people do not have that ability and they simply embrace whatever bias they have as the truth, and they apply that to real life situations. And I think Trayvon Martin was just another example of that happening. The truth is, Trayvon Martin is just one of many, many examples throughout the years that have brought out the worst in people. You remember Oscar Grant and Diallo in New York and all those other people that have died unnecessarily. And it really goes to show you that, I mean, despite the fact that we've made a lot of strides as far as civil rights and as far as racial harmony, we still have a long way to go in regards to that. But the thing that really gets me is the way some people are really approaching the subject and the opinions that I've heard. I feel like on one side we have racist people who are just biased, and I don't really pay attention to their opinion because their opinion is basically just their bias dressed up as something legitimate. You know, when they try and say that Zimmerman was just defending himself, no, he wasn't. Because, I mean, when you take away the racial component and everything, at least in my opinion, when I look at the situation, all I see is an adult male profiled a young teen coming out of the store. Trayvon Martin was not running. He was not holding a gun. He was not harassing anyone. He was walking out of the store on his cell phone. Zimmerman decides to approach him and confront him with, with no warrant, no reason, no probable cause, nothing. He unilaterally makes the decision that Trayvon Martin is a threat, and then confronts him. And then from then on, the only person who knows the truth is the killer. But we don't even know what he told him. For all you know, he might have approached him and called him a nigger, told him to get out of the neighborhood. We don't know what he told him. But what we do know is that he approached him. He didn't have to. He was told not to. He had no reason to go after Trayvon Martin at that point. When he called 911, his job was done. But he decides to approach him, starts a confrontation with him, and apparently he was getting his ass whooped. And then he brings out a gun and kills him. That's not self-defense. That's aggression. When you take away the racial component and everything, at the end of the day, that's aggression. Self-defense is if I'm walking down the street and someone attacks me for no reason, and I have no other choice than to bring out a gun and use it. But I don't have a right to go after someone, start a confrontation with the person, get it to the point where the confrontation becomes physical, and then kill the person. That's not self-defense, because the conflict would have never happened had I not approached the person. And that's the way I see it with Zimmerman. No one would have died or gone to jail had Zimmerman simply followed the instructions of the 911 operator. But he didn't do that. He goes after a teen, a kid, and starts a confrontation. And then that's another thing. After the murder, the media was trying to paint Trayvon, actually the media and some biased assholes, pardon my language, were trying to paint Trayvon as this super thug, 6'3", 200 and something pounds, all kinds of stories. And at the end of the day, when you watch the trial, you realize that he wasn't even through. He wasn't bigger than Zimmerman. He wasn't heavier than Zimmerman. He wasn't. I don't even think he was 6 feet tall. But they tried to make him into this aggressive criminal, and he wasn't. He was just your average kid. He wasn't selling drugs in the neighborhood. He wasn't selling guns in the neighborhood. He wasn't harassing anybody. He wasn't robbing anybody. He was walking out of his store with Skittles on his cell phone. And it was raining, so he had a hoodie on. That should not be the reason someone gets killed. That should not be the reason someone gets harassed. Not even by a police officer, mind you, but by just a regular person. But yet, people are so biased and so intellectually dishonest that they try to paint the situation as some sort of justifiable self-defense example. Like Trayvon was a potentially dangerous person and Zimmerman had no other choice but to kill him. And that's not what happened. He harassed a boy. He harassed a boy who hadn't even started living yet, who had not even reached the age of 20. He harassed a boy, and only God knows what Zimmerman told him. For all you know, he might have told him all kinds of things to get the situation to the point where it became physical. We don't even know that. I mean, how would you feel if you're walking down the street on the cell phone doing nothing illegal and someone is following you? You would be on edge. You don't know what to expect. For all you know, Trayvon could have thought that Zimmerman wanted to rob him. And yet, some people are so biased, so intellectually dishonest, that they still think that there is some sort of gray area in a situation where there is clearly no gray. There is no gray area here, because it's really simple. You don't go and start a confrontation with someone without reason. It would have been different if we caught him selling drugs, stealing something, harassing someone. I could understand that. But he's walking out of a store on his cell phone with a bag of goods that he bought from the store. He's doing nothing illegal. No one is chasing him. He's not running. He's not looking around looking suspicious. He's on his cell phone. He could have followed him for a little bit, determined that he was no threat, and left the situation at that. He could have called the cops and left the situation at that. But instead, he confronts him, kills him, and then the only person who knows the whole story is the person who killed him. The killer is the only witness that can tell us what happened. And why would the killer incriminate himself? It baffles me how people are so biased. And I understand that a significant number of people are really racist, and they have no problem with the fact that Zimmerman did what he did. But instead of simply saying that, they try to dress up their bias as some sort of justifiable sense of justice, or some sort of example of reasonable doubt. Oh, maybe that's not what happened. Or, well, we don't really know what happened. Well, it's just a tragedy for both of them. No, it's not a tragedy for both of them. Zimmerman was an idiot. He was an idiot who started a confrontation with someone and killed him for no reason. He's someone who had a history of violence before. And say what you want to say, but there is a racial component here. Because this is not the first time. And it will not be the last time. Look at what happened to Oscar Grant. Killed in a station with dozens of cameras catching the event live. And the cop who killed him gets the minimum sentence on the minimum charges and gets out after a year. And no one has a problem with that. But a black guy will get arrested for having a bag of weed and thrown in jail for years. A black guy will get arrested for getting into a fight where he doesn't even use any weapons And what should be considered assault and battery becomes attempted murder or aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. I took criminal justice in college. That was my major. And they teach you that in school. There is a bias in the criminal justice system. Everybody knows it. Not everyone is willing to accept it. Not everyone is willing to be honest about it. But we all know it. And there is a difference in value between black life and white life. There always has been. A black kid can be lynched for looking at a white woman wrong. And people made postcards out of the picture of his body. And no arrest is made. Nothing. Decades after the fact, the people who did it are still free. A man will shoot a black man in a train station in cold blood, that is for no reason, and the black man is already subdued. And the black man has no weapon on him. At least at that time. And still, nothing. A guy can profile a kid walking out of a store. Not a man. Not some sort of super thug that was 6'3", 190 pounds, which he wasn't. Just a regular kid. Your average kid. Profiles him, follows him, confronts him, gets into a physical altercation, kills him, and then tells you some bullshit story, and then tells you it's self-defense, and it's okay. And people still think that some black people are angry for no reason. It's ridiculous. It kind of reminds me of the OJ case back in the day. It's the same way white people were reacting then. And that case had even more of a gray area than this one, when you think about it. And I'm not saying OJ was innocent. I don't think he was innocent. But I feel like people are so biased sometimes. It baffles me. And in the midst of all this hoopla, in the midst of all this media hoopla, we forget that a boy is dead. When Zimmerman shot him and killed him, he took away everything that Trayvon could have become. For all we know, he could have gone on to have a great career in college. And then he would have gone on to become a productive member of society. He could have been something great. But we'll never find out because Zimmerman decided to play super cop with a kid and killed him. And he's not even man enough to apologize the way he's supposed to. Instead, he tries to pretend like it was a warranted situation when it wasn't. And what happens next time? And the time before, the time after that? How many more people have to die stupidly before people realize there's a problem and before something is done about it? And then we have people like Protean View and a whole bunch of contrarians whose only job is to find the opposite view of whatever the majority is thinking and embrace it. And I try not to be biased, but I look at a case like this and to me it's pretty simple. Because the whole situation could have been avoided if he had simply followed instructions. I'm 6'2", 235 pounds. I know how to defend myself. I've boxed, I've done martial arts. I know how to defend myself, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to start a confrontation with someone just because. Even if the other person is at fault, 9 times out of 10, I will back out. Because it's not worth it. Because I'm older. Because I know that life is not a movie. And something horrible might happen. Zimmerman did not act like an adult. And because of his stupidity, a family has lost a son. And a lot of people like to bring up Chicago, the Chicago murder rate or whatever. Why are you comparing the murder of a boy who was innocent with gang violence? That's stupid. They're two completely different topics. If an innocent Mexican kid is murdered, What would that have to do with the violence going on in Mexico between drug cartels? Completely unrelated. They just happen to be of the same race. That's the same exact situation here. Yeah, Trayvon was black and he was killed. And yeah, there are many kids in Chicago that are killed every day by other black kids, but they're gang members. That's a symptom of a whole different problem. Gang violence is a different problem from racial violence. One does not cancel out the other. And it's not true that black people don't march against gang violence. It's just that the media doesn't make a big fuss about it. There have been communities of black people marching against gang violence for decades, but they don't get any coverage. No one cares about them. There are activists that continue to work hard to try and stop gang violence. There are teachers that have gone to some of the best schools in the country, and they choose to continue working in public institutions in the inner city. They don't have to, but they choose to because they're trying to change things, but they don't get media coverage. So when people say that black people are being biased or they're cherry picking things to be outraged about, that's not true. It's the media that's biased, because the media doesn't show you that side of things. They take stories like Trayvon and use it for ratings. And contrarians like Protean View fuel the fire by creating pointless debates in a situation that's black and white. And it's sad, because at the end of the day, an innocent boy is dead, and the guilty person who killed him is free. And we all think, oh well, that's sad or whatever. But that could be you or me. And that has nothing to do with race, mind you. You could be a white person walking down the street, and another white person could profile you because you have a few tattoos and an earring, start a confrontation with you, pull out a knife and shoot you. And then what happens? But we forget that, because Trayvon has become nothing but a topic. It's not a person anymore. It's a story. But there's no gray area here. Zimmerman did not follow the instructions he was given, and he abused his right to self-defense the minute he decided to start a confrontation with someone who was not harassing him or attacking anybody else for that matter. And we should not forget that. So that's my view on the topic. And my best wishes go to the Martin family. And hopefully God will be the one to bring out justice, because eventually we're all going to face it. Till next time, guys.